How does Bitcoin work? In order to truly understand Bitcoin, we need to look at the underlying technology, which is called blockchain. A blockchain is a decentralized ledger system. And so the thing that makes it decentralized is that instead of one central party or a handful of financial institutions maintaining this ledger, it's basically any participant on the network has their very own version and copy of the ledger. And this ledger is built into the core software. And this software also acts as a wallet and has all the rules of the ledger encoded into it. We call this software a node, and anyone can run a node on their computer. And so what this looks like is that everyone's ledger is communicating with everyone else's ledger and with the miners to ensure that everyone has an accurate copy of the ledger and that all the participants are following the rules of the network. The more nodes that you have on this system, the more decentralized it becomes. So for example, if there's only 2 people running nodes, it's not very decentralized. Whereas if you have thousands of people running nodes, it's a lot more decentralized and makes it very, very difficult to shut down the network because you'd have to go after all the various different people who happen to be running a node. And also, let's just say that the internet were to shut down tomorrow. All you need is one copy of this ledger, an up-to-date copy, and you could start the entire system over again and pick up where we left off. And so then you have miners, and miners help secure new transactions on the ledger to prevent counterfeiting or double spending. And the way they do this is they keep the ledger perpetually moving forward by contributing computer power to the network. So it becomes exceedingly difficult and extremely expensive to try to rewind and move this ledger back because it's constantly moving forward. And that's what gives the ledger immutability, which means that anything put on the ledger is permanently time-stamped and cannot be changed. And so this is the underlying power behind Bitcoin and what makes it so remarkable as a decentralized financial system. And so how miners contribute to the network is they contribute hashing power to help solve a complex cryptographic math problem. And solving this problem is a lot like winning a lottery. So they generate computer power to the network that just creates billions of alphanumeric hashes, and eventually one of these is the right hash or series of numbers to be able to solve this problem. And that every single time a problem is solved, a group of transactions that happened on the network, they're bundled together and they're recorded on the ledger, time-stamped as a block. And so all these blocks of transactions that we have, they're linked together with other blocks on the chain, and this is why it's called a blockchain. So these miners, they're also incentivized to help secure the network, so it's not a voluntary act. Every time a miner solves a block, they are rewarded with the creation of new coins. So this is how the creation of Bitcoins comes into existence, right? It's from miners solving blocks. And so this is a reward mechanism to ensure that everyone is incentivized to not try to game the system, because if they game the system, then the Bitcoins they mine become valueless and they end up just wasting a bunch of money on hardware and electricity. And so nodes, anyone who's running a copy of this ledger, they ensure that miners follow the rules and don't game the system. And so there are natural checks and balances in the system between miners, the developers, and node operators, which also happen to be participants on the network. And Bitcoin blocks are solved approximately every 10 minutes, which makes it a self-regulating system, a system that's regulated by mathematical algorithms as opposed to political whims. So let's just look at the evolution of Bitcoin mining. So initially, you could contribute to the network in the early days in 2009 and 10, just with the CPU, just with your basic computer, a laptop or a home computer was enough, because there weren't a lot of participants on the network. Now, the interesting thing is, because it's a self-regulating system, the more people who contribute computer power to the network, the difficulty goes up to ensure that blocks are solved still approximately every 10 minutes, give or take. Then people realized that if they use graphics cards, known as GPU, then they could actually generate more hashes and have a better chance of solving blocks. So we evolved from CPU, and that no longer became profitable, into people building their home mining rigs. Eventually that evolved into FPGA, which eventually evolved into these specialized supercomputers called application specific integrated circuits. These are specialized computers whose only purpose is to generate hashes to solve Bitcoin blocks. That's all they're good for. And eventually that became very competitive. And now what you have are people who have huge data centers, or they rent warehouses full of ASICs to be able to mine this. You can still mine at home, but it's more of a hobby. If you want to do it as a business, you definitely have to likely rent a warehouse and manufacture your own ASICs. All right, so if you're going to get into mining as a business, there are several factors you need to look at in order to make a return on investment. So the first thing is the cost of hardware. So that's the very first cost that you'll have when setting up a mining operation. Then you have to make sure that your electricity rates are competitive. So you might want to mine in a jurisdiction that has the lowest electricity rates. You need to factor in the network difficulty to ensure that your hardware is up to par, because if you have outdated hardware, it's really not going to do any good. And look at the price of Bitcoin, right? If the price of Bitcoin is too low, it might be difficult to make ROI based on the block rewards. And also the mining pool fees. Oftentimes miners will pool their resources together so that they can solve more blocks more frequently and get a constant stream of Bitcoin trickling in based on their share and what they're contributing to the pool. So we also have to look at the Bitcoin block rewards that halve every 4 years. So initially the rewards were about 50 Bitcoins, then it got halved to 25, then it got halved 4 years later to 12.5, so on and so forth. And this is just going to keep on happening every 4 years until the block rewards are incredibly minuscule, and then miners will have to just subsidize themselves from fees alone. So here's an interesting site. It's bitcoinblockhalf.com. If you want to keep up to date with the amount of Bitcoins in circulation and when the next block halving is, it shows you all the statistics in order to be able to do that. So it'll show you the total Bitcoins in circulation, the total Bitcoins ever to be produced, the percentage of total Bitcoins mined, total Bitcoins left to mine, total Bitcoins left to mine until the next block half, the Bitcoin price, the market capitalization, which is just price times supply, and then the Bitcoins generated each and every day. So let's look at what it means to own Bitcoins. All coins are stored on the ledger through cryptographic key pairs. So a public key is what you use as a receiving address, and you give that out to people and they can send Bitcoins to that public address. But your private keys are what allow you to unlock the Bitcoins on the public ledger and be able to send them to someone else. So all public keys and coins can be seen by anyone. So you don't have a name attached to your public address, but everyone can still see that public address and all the coins that are on it. So best practices say if you're going to receive new coins, you should generate a new public address. And then private keys are what allow you ownership to be able to unlock and send those coins to someone else on the network. So here's an example of a public and private key pair. Basically, they work together kind of like a lock and key. So this is a public address that you would give to people if you wanted them to send you Bitcoin. And then the private key is what allows you to unlock that and claim ownership of it. Oftentimes, these private keys will be hidden and encrypted in your software wallet, but you can also get access to them.